Okay, so I will try to keep this as on topic as possible and not digress too much. I want to touch on a topic that is just covered to fucking death on YouTube. I mean, it is a case of just spreading way too much mayonnaise on the Wonder Bread. I mean, just dumping the whole fucking jar of Best Foods. I don't know if you like Best Fruits or frickin', what kind of mayo you like, but it's just putting way too much on a concept that I think I have come to understand the basic nuts and bolts and underlying mechanics of much better than I had previously. And this came through an epiphany I had today. Like this morning, I really wasn't feeling it. Like freaking, I was feeling a lot of negative, neurotic, emotional states. Like my energy level was all fucked off, and I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to do anything. Freaking, I didn't even want to run some necessary errands that I had to take care of. Like I just was not feeling it at all. A very not great spot to be in your head at the moment, and I couldn't really shake myself off of it. But you know, took a shower, got dressed, went out, ran my errands, and I was coming back home. I put my groceries in the fridge, and I didn't want to stay inside. I was feeling very cagey, very antsy, very anxious. I felt this intense desire to just get out and get away and go do something, anything. So grabbed my phone, grabbed my earbuds, and I just went out for a walk. I went out for a long, good, probably 2.5 hour walk altogether, and I just walked up my street a good long ways, Sixth Avenue, and I live in Tucson, Arizona, and I walked north towards downtown. I live south of the downtown area, so I just started walking up towards it, and put my earbuds in, and I started listening to my music. I like a lot of metal. I'm an absolute Priest fanatic. I love Judas Priest. Priest is my shit. Fucking, it's like opera to me. Freaking, I just consider that music to be absolutely pure ecstasy to listen to. So, started listening to Living Bad Dreams, and it took a while for this to happen, probably a good half hour for it to really kick in, but I started feeling myself really loosen up as I was walking. Like my strides were getting longer, my shoulders were kind of rolling back and forth with my gait. My head was doing a little bob, I was kind of getting into the music. The music was getting into my bones, as it were. I could feel a little smile creep into my face every once in a while, and then I started mouthing the lyrics, and you know, about 45 minutes into my walk, I was really bumping. Like I was bumping the shit out of the music, to the point to where I'd freaking stop and do silly, stupid shit. Freaking, I'd fucking start bouncing, hopscotching, freaking, I'd sea walk a little bit. I just do absolutely obnoxious crap, as I was going. And it became less and less me walking up the street and more me dancing up the street. And what I noticed was I was feeling really good. I mean, really good. Like, I felt absolutely awesome. I was fucking just there. I was very much enjoying my day. And it wasn't so much like I felt good about myself, because that, like, the about myself part didn't really factor into the equation. It's like I didn't have any thought as to what my self-esteem or like my self-assessment, like when it's like feel good about yourself, there's an implicit self-obsessment, like an attempt to place an objective value on how you assess your worth. It's like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel? It's like, well, fuck. It's if if you're defining how you feel in those terms, you're in a bad place, in my opinion, because you shouldn't be doing that. It's like, how do you feel about yourself? It's like, really, I think that if you're mentally healthy, it's like, how I feel about myself never creeps into my head in the first place. Like, I don't think about that. How I feel about myself, where I place myself on some arbitrary worth scale. Because, like, you do that, guess what? You're always going to assess yourself lower than you are. And then that begs the question, well, by what standard do you measure that? On whose scale? Because there is no objective scale for that, not really. And you're just going to drive yourself insane if you try to use society as a good determining, use society as the measuring stick for that. Because guess what? Freaking, there are people in the top 1% of socioeconomic status, and freaking society slams the fuck out of that. It's like, you can't use these metrics to define how you feel, and you shouldn't be thinking about how you feel about yourself. You should just be thinking, I feel good. Not about myself, I just feel good in general. And that's a healthier way to look at it. But getting back on topic, by 45 minutes in, I was fucking dancing and grooving and fucking bumping my priest to the extent to where I would just pause and fucking, I didn't scream it out, but freaking I'd throw my head back and freaking I would mouth out the lyrics, and I could feel myself exhaling like I was shouting the lyrics out. I was doing this in full view of people. Now, I won't say this is like earth shattering or anything, because my walk didn't take me into like any huge crowds, fucking. I don't live in Times Square. I live in Tucson, Arizona. Even in the downtown area, especially with COVID going on, there are not that many people, but there were people around, and I did know that people were seeing me, and some of them were noticing. But the funny thing about it is that a lot of the people who noticed started smiling. Like, my good mood was becoming infectious. My good mood and my willingness to freely express it in my movements and in my behavior was becoming infectious. About an hour into my walk, right about when I decided to turn around, I had reached Hoffman Park, and I walked a loop around Hoffman Park, freaking rather danced a loop around it, freaking really just totally absorbed by my music, just absolutely consumed by my music. And I decided to walk back because it took me like almost an hour to get up there. I didn't want to waste the whole day just walking around. So I started my walk back, and I noticed there was a corner house, and a man and a woman. She was an attractive blonde, sunglasses, stepping out the front door, and she saw me. She saw me, looked at me dead in the face, and started grinning. And I looked right back at her, and I put a little smile on my face. And I just kept bumping, you know, unfazed. And that's when I realized that is when it hit me. Like it went from the unconscious to the conscious. Like, I am really in state here. Like, this is what congruency feels like. Congruency is when, like, I won't say that this is necessarily what congruency is, but I think this is the closest, most accurate working definition that I can understand about how being in state and exhibiting a desirable behavior is. And what I mean by a desirable behavior, it's a behavior that other people will seek to achieve. It's a behavior that other people around you would want to achieve for themselves. That's what being in state is. It's exhibiting behavior that the people around you would like to be able to exhibit themselves. Now, that's easy enough to say, but then the key becomes, well, how do you get there? Well, the way you have to get there is you have to just do what you want to do in the moment, no matter how silly, no matter how stupid, no matter how potentially immature or quote unquote ungrown up it is. I'm 36 years old and I fucking danced my way up and down 6th Avenue for fucking 2 hours. Just doing what I wanted to do in the moment, what just came to mind in the moment, and not fucking worrying about how it came off on other people. Not worrying about what other people saw when they looked at me or how they would judge it. I didn't care. That is alpha behavior, in my humble opinion. That is what being alpha is. It is not placing other people's perceptions of you at a higher level of priority than what you want to do in the moment. It's not caring about what they're perceiving about you. And that kind of makes a very simple, elegant kind of sense, because it's like when you put a priority on conducting yourself in a way that other people will find, like trying to force your behavior to conform to the expectations of other people. When you do that, you're basically placing everyone around you in the position of judge, jury, and executioner on what your worth is and what your value is and what you can and can't do as an individual with regards to simple behavior. How you walk down the street, where you look, how you look at people, what you do on a moment-to-moment level. When you are placing other people's perceptions of you at a higher level, on a plateau above what you want to do in the moment, you are placing them in the position to judge you. And you are inherently giving them higher value. You are lowering your value as a person in relation to everyone around you because you're seeking to be below the radar. You're seeking to blend in. You're seeking to not do anything that will cause you to stick out in other people's perceptions because you're worried about sticking out in a bad way. And that behavior in and of itself, that desire to conform to other people's perceptions of you, is what makes you undesirable in the first place, because people pick up on it, especially women. Beta behavior. You want to know what beta behavior is? It's that. It's forcing yourself to try and, it's like being a square peg and trying to force yourself to be a round peg to fit in the hole. When it should be the other way around. You're a square peg. Stay a square peg and expect the round hole to become square for you. That is alpha behavior. Do not compromise how you want to act in the moment out of worry that it's going to come off wrong. Don't do that. Don't worry about it. Some people are going to get pissed off. Guess what? You know what? A lot of people are going to get pissed off for the exact same reason a lot of people are going to be attracted to it. Why? Because they envy it. They're jealous of it. They are jealous of it. They see your freeness and they have naked envy. And they try to conceal it by trying to tear you down and criticize you for it. You know, if I hear someone criticize someone for acting free, if they're not doing anything that's harmful to another person, you know, if they're not creating a bad experience for the people around them and they're acting free and this has the effect of drawing attention to them, and someone criticized that, you know what I'm going to tell them? Yeah, I envy that guy too. Let's be honest here. Cut the bullshit. You wish you were that guy. And you know it. All these people who like to tear down others for being free and expressing themselves in healthy ways and being individuals and valuing their stupid, silly behavior because it's stupid and silly and they just want to do it. The people who seek to criticize that are the ones who are afraid to do it. They're fearful of taking the risk of doing it. And you know what? Those are the people who are undesirable. Those are the people who are weak. Those are the people of low value. You know, freaking, I have heard a lot of talk on YouTube regarding the high value male. Well, I think it's important to recognize what the low value male is. And it's the guy who does that. It's the guy who criticizes behavior that he envies under the guise of it being behavior that he does not approve of. That is what a low value man does. And guess what? Women hate that in a man. It's not a desirable trait. So all these fucking betas, all these guys with high neuroticism who are preoccupied with how other people see them, especially the women that they're trying to attract, just fucking loosen up. Loosen up. And stop envying other people. Because when you see a behavior that you envy, guess what you're not seeing? You're not seeing all the other ways that that person's fucked up. Because guess what? I fucking drew the eyes of everyone for 2 hours. I had a lot of people who were wishing they were me. And guess what? At my worst, when I'm not feeling it, freaking, I catch myself thinking I wish I was other people. And I try to stop myself from thinking that at all. Because it's unhealthy. You should never wish you were somebody else. You know, there's nothing wrong with seeking to aspire and using other people as good templates for a way to go about doing that, but never wish you were somebody else. Never do that. It's not good. It's not healthy. Even at my worst, I prefer to be me than somebody else. You know, freaking me is what I have to work with. Me is who I am. And you know what? Me, myself, I can improve. You know, if I have characteristics that I don't particularly like about myself, I can improve those. And I can find healthy ways to to conceptualize who I am as an individual. And one thing I'd like to bring up is the entire time I was walking, I didn't have any thoughts, like no thoughts. Like I know most people are aware of the stereotype where you have this little voice in your head. It's a little voice that says things, like little voice that says, "Yeah, you're not a bad person," or "Yeah, you have good self-worth," or "Yeah, you're a cool guy," or "Yeah, women like you." It's like, guess what? If that fucking voice is saying any of those things, you know what's happening? You don't think women like you. You don't think you're a cool guy. You don't believe you're a good person. You don't believe you have worth. Because if you did, you would not need that voice to tell you those things. If you have a little voice trying to give you positive reinforcement, it's because you don't really believe any of those things are true. That's why the voice is there. It's trying to save you. Trying to save you by trying to keep the ship level because you're tilting too far into the negative and the voice is trying to right it. Well, that's a sign that fucking you don't think much of yourself. When your voice is trying to tell you that you are worthwhile, that you do have value, guess what? You really don't think that. You're convinced that you don't. But yeah, freaking that whole time the voice completely disappeared. There was no voice. There was no being in my head at all. I wasn't having any thoughts about anything. You know, I think that when you're in the moment, you don't have thoughts because there's no conflict between the way you want to behave and the way you choose to behave. I think that's where thoughts actually crop up. Thoughts are a manifestation of the way you want to behave and the way you want to be, but you're not allowing yourself to do those things. So thoughts creep in. That's where the thoughts come from. When you are doing what you want to do, the moment you want to do it, you don't need to have a thought about it. You don't need to think about it. There's no dichotomy between your thoughts and your actions. So you have no thoughts. You just take actions in the moment. And I'm gonna I'm gonna pull some Rollo Tomasi in on this and kind of bring up some of his working definitions. I'm going to try and accurately state this and not butcher it because the man's a fucking genius. I have a great deal of respect for him. Like freaking men like Rollo Tomasi are doing more for our society than freaking any of the freaking politicians that are out there, in my opinion. And Rollo Tomasi in The Rational Male brings up an example of alpha behavior and alpha mentality in the form of the quote unquote alpha Buddha, a young man by the name of Corey Worthington, who is renowned in infamy for having a party at his parents' house without permission that resulted in over $20,000 in property damage. The police getting called out there and just utter chaos. And Rollo's book, The Rational Male, which I've read, brings up that example as what an out the most clear cut in your face ham-fisted example of what alpha behavior is. And while I do think the example is great because it gives you a clear, uncut understanding of what alpha what an alpha looks like, but in the most extreme possible sense. Like this, I would consider Corey Worthington an example of alpha behavior run amok and gone way too far, taken to extremes. You know, you don't want to be this guy. I'll tell you that much. You do not want to be this guy because this guy is scum. He is a worthless little shit. He absolutely is. You know, he's a detriment. Make no mistake. This guy is not someone who's esteemable in any sense except in terms of social sexual dynamics. And that's only because he's exhibiting behavior that's very alpha and very desirable to women. And if you watch the interview, and I recommend you do, you know, look it up on YouTube and watch that interview from start to finish. And I want you to pay attention to do two things. One, pay attention to Corey, how he responds to the news anchor questioning him. And then I want you to pay very close attention. Pay very close attention to how the news anchor is acting. Because it's a female news anchor. Guess what? That's not by mistake. That's very intentional. That's deliberate that it's a female news anchor. You know, I don't know whether or not she insisted on being the one to interview him or whether or not the studio executives freaking saw what I'm seeing and made that decision. But it was very deliberate that they placed that female news anchor there. And I want you to watch her throughout that interview very closely and how she reacts to his responses to her attempts to degrade and shame him. And that'll give you a good idea of what alpha behavior at a very extreme and low resolution level is. Because I'll tell you this much, freaking, if you had to freaking start a party like that, cause that much property damage, and freaking, you know, if you had to cause a scene like that, guess what? For a lot of people, being alpha would kind of be an impossibility. You don't have to do that. This is a manifestation of the alpha mentality taken way too far. You don't need to do this to exude the alpha mentality. But this is where the alpha mentality goes when it's left unchecked, when it's not reined in at all. So the Corey Worthington interview is very useful if you view it in that context. Now, I'm digressing a little bit, but part of the reason why I bring up that interview is I'm going to do something I don't want to do. And yeah, I drink my Coca-Cola Zero out of the bottle. You're going to have to deal with it. I'm very uncouth in that manner, but since I'm the only one drinking it, you know, I'm not cultured. Anyways, where was I going? Oh, yeah. This is going to be a criticism on Rollo Tomasi, and I'm very hesitant to level any amount of criticism on the guy because, goddamn, he has put the work in. Like, I've put no work in. You know, I've put some personal work in on myself, but in terms of spreading this out and in terms of creating content and trying to spread a good understanding of male-female intersexual dynamics, how men and women really work with each other and how the mechanisms operate. Like that I'm tempted to say, you're doing God's work, son. You're doing God's work. God bless you. No. But no, he's doing very profound work. And so I hate to level any criticism on him. But I'm going to criticize him when he tries to find ways to come up with a working operating definition of what alpha male behavior and mentality is. He he does something that, ironically enough, he criticizes another very great man who does wonderful work, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. Rollo Tomassi criticizes Dr. Jordan B. Peterson for ironically doing something that I've caught Rollo doing himself in his videos. And this is going to come across as very, very, dare I say, arrogant. And that's not the intention. So please don't think that I'm going there intentionally. But it is a bit of a criticism. So Rollo criticizes Jordan B. Peterson for whenever he touches on topics of intersexual social dynamics, like hypergamy and female mating strategies. Jordan B. Peterson keeps it very much in the realm of socioeconomic concerns and status and competency hierarchies. I think part of the reason that is because that's where Peterson feels most comfortable in working. Like he doesn't like to delve into the real nuts and bolts of man-women relationships. He keeps it very abstract and analytical, but he also likes to view it in terms of how it fits into a holistic set of hierarchies, you know? Like Peterson's the guy you talk to when you talk about how male and female behavioral traits will manifest across populations and in societies. I'd say he's the guy to talk to about that because that's where he naturally always seems to take the conversation. The problem is that when you do that, you make it difficult to relate to a lot of these concepts, especially, say, alpha mentality and alpha behavioral traits. It's like, you know, how do you relate to that when the person discussing it is always talking about it in context of large populations and society? It's like, no, you need to bring this closer to home. You need to bring it into a person's everyday environment. Bring what alpha mentality is into the day of the person who's watching the video. If you can't do that, you're not explaining it well. And Rollo, ironically enough, falls into this same mistake I see, although he's much better about bringing the examples home. Like he will talk about the basic nuts and bolts of hypergamy and mating strategies and alpha versus beta behavior, and he will bring that much closer to home and bring it much closer to a place where a person actually has a chance in hell of applying it. But at the same time, a lot of times when he tries to actually, I think he has a difficult time really describing the behavior himself. Because his best example is kind of a ham-fisted one, and it's overdoing it. That example, a lot of people, I feel, will miss the point when they watch the Corey Worthington video, simply because it's so overt. Like, it's too overt. Maybe other people will get this better than I do, but I think it's like, yeah, freaking average guy is not going to be able to make what Corey Worthington did happen. And he might not be able to like connect how the behavior is going to connect and relate to his own day-to-day life. You know, Rollo a lot of times when he's pinned down to like describe, well, what is an alpha male? Well, a lot of times he falls on some of the stuff that Jordan Peterson does. He'll give an example and it's like, oh, he's a leader of men. Oh, he's a director. He's a leader of a community. He's the mayor of a town. He's a CEO of a company. That's like, what are you doing, man? It's like, guess what? Not everyone can be the CEO of a goddamn company. Not everyone can or wants to be a behavior or be a mayor. And I don't believe that it's necessary to be those things to exhibit alpha behavior. And I think Rollo believes that too, because in a lot of the same explanations, he says that a lot of these people are not alphas themselves. They're beta. And I can definitely see that. You know, freaking, it's It's a case of you need to find the fundamental underpinnings of the behavior and the mindset, and then you need to connect it to day-to-day life in a basic way that everyone can relate to. Every man can relate to, what no matter what his position in life or what his occupation is. And that's where we come to my walk. And I think my walk actually stumbled onto a bit of an epiphany. And God, I sometimes I talk too fast and I get word salad, and I just can't get the damn words out because I'm trying to speak the thoughts so quickly. It's like I'm reading from a teleprompter in my head, and the teleprompter is moving too fast for my mouth to catch up. And yeah, that's a problem. But yeah, you need to connect the alpha behavior and the alpha mentality in a way that it can be understood and applied in every person's life. If you can't do that, then the explanation isn't worth that much. It's not that useful. So, where the walk comes in is I really believe that I was fully in state and exhibiting what is fundamentally alpha behavior, but not doing it in such an overt and extreme way as the case examples that people like Rollo Tomasi have given. Like, you do not need to be the center. You do not need to be the leader of a group to be alpha. That's not the point. That is missing the fucking point. That is not the point. Yeah, usually, yeah, there's a connection in that people who exhibit a lot of alpha traits often tend to be the leaders of groups. And by leaders, I don't mean they like get to higher positions in competency hierarchies. No, no. I mean only that other men in the group will defer to them. You don't, like, if you're a supervisor, guess what? The alpha is probably not the supervisor. The alpha might be the crew lead. You know, the crew lead's beneath the supervisor, but guess what? The crew lead might be a hell of a lot more alpha than the supervisor because the crew lead knows how to lead his people. You know, in the example of, say, an industrial environment. And it doesn't even have to be the crew lead. It could simply be an experienced worker who exhibits alpha behavioral traits, and people will, and other men will tend to defer to that guy and tend to follow his lead naturally. You know, that's a more accurate way of viewing it, because you can't define it in terms of these pre-established competency and dominancy hierarchies, for one simple reason. These hierarchies have already ossified